Hey everyone, it is great to see you here again on the Merkinch YouTube channel. And before our reading by Kevin, one of the members here, we're just going to do a quick recap of the previous reading, verses 1 to 5. And in those first 5 verses in the book of Ruth, we're introduced to the time period the judges ruled. We're told in the book of Judges that's not a particularly great time in the nation of Israel. Everyone was doing what was right in their own eyes. And we come to this passage and we get introduced to a man who is doing that exact thing. He is doing what is right in his own eyes, because during the time of famine, he decides to move his family to a foreign land. And not just any distant land, but actually an enemy of his people. And we're informed that after a number of years, that this man passes away. And his family, his wife and 2 sons, stay in Moab for a further 10 years. And that's not as long as the famine lasted, but what this is indicating to us is that Abimelech's family, the character that we're introduced to in the first 5 verses, moved maybe for legitimate reasons as though to stop his family from starving. But what happened was his family started to assimilate to the culture around them. Indeed, his 2 sons married Moabite women. But we're not told that they had any children. And by the end of our reading last week, we find out that Naomi, Abimelech's wife, has lost her husband and lost her 2 boys. It was kind of an abrupt stop last week. But that's deliberate, because that's the way the text is framed. So today, one of our team, Kevin Otanis, is going to read the next few verses for us, verses 6 to 14. So if you have a Bible, please open to that book of Ruth after Judges, before Samuel in your Bible. If not, Kevin's going to read it, and through the power and wonder of technology, the words are going to appear on the screen.
The book of Ruth, chapter 1, verse 6 to 14. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law to return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the fields of Moab that the Lord had visited his people and given them food. So she set out from the place where she was with her 2 daughters-in-law, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband." Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, "No, we will return with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb that they may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, even if I should have a husband this night and should bear sons, would you therefore wait till they were grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, for it is exceedingly bitter to me for your sake that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me." Then they lifted up their voices and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her.
Thanks, Kevin, for reading there. That was great. So I want to do something a bit different this week. I want to ask you a question wherever you are, whatever device you're watching this on. I want to ask, what gives you hope? If you want to pause the video here, just to think about it for a minute before we move on. What each day gives you hope? Hope for getting up out of bed, hope for just life. So pause, if you're watching it with someone, have a wee time of discussion. However you answer that question, we normally fall into two camps. The first is we want to express desire with the word hope. Like, I hope my universal credit comes in on time. I hope that I can get a change of house, like we said last week. I hope I get that new job because that would help me in my life. Hope here is a desire for change. The second way we can quite often use hope is to place hope upon hope. And that might sound a wee bit weird, but let me put it this way. I hope my mate Mark can get clean and break free of his addiction so we can rebuild our friendship. Here, the real hope is the renewal of that friendship, but it has to start with Mark efficiently breaking his addiction. The first hope leads on to more hope. Or, I hope my child does well in his test today so that he can get into uni, and I hope he gets a better life than I have had. That's normally the two types of ways we use hope. A desire and a wish, like a wishful thought. And what we see with this use of hope is it expresses uncertainty, doesn't it? And if we were really to probe into the way we use the word hope, that's what we would find. That we use it when we are trying to express something that is uncertain, something that may be changeable. We all hear today hope that things get better with the COVID-19 virus. We hope that social distancing will work. We hope that these great scientists who are working hard can create a vaccine. We right now are people who are living in hope for change within our culture, right? But it's uncertain. How long is this going to go on for? What is the future going to look like? We're hoping for change, but everything is shifting like sand because it is uncertain. Now, the amazing, beautiful, encouraging, truly good news of Jesus Christ is that the hope that he gives us is not expressing uncertainty, but a sure hope. A dependable hope, a transformational hope, which led to a writer in the New Testament in the book of Hebrews saying, "Hold fast to the hope set before us. We have this as sure and steadfast as an anchor to the soul." Hope in God, hope in Jesus is like a steadfast anchor in our souls. A steadfast anchor in times like this where everything is so fluid and changeable and uncertain, that the Christians can have hope that God is not like that. He is not uncertain. He is not changeable. He does not change his emotions like that. He is dependable. And why do I say all this? Because we're looking at the book of Ruth, right? We're looking at this case of Naomi for what Kevin just read for us. And what I want you to notice here is that Naomi is moved by hope. That she is looking for hope. Yes, Naomi, who is despairing, broken, and hurt, is still looking for real, true hope. She's looking for change. And she even says herself in verse 12, if you look at verse 12, she recognizes that hope cannot come within her anymore. There's no hope there. She even says to her daughters, there's no way I'm going to bear any more children. There's no way I'm going to get married. There's no hope for me. There's no hope for change coming from within me. So where's Naomi looking for hope in this passage? Well, the answer is in the first few verses that Kevin read for us. Naomi has decided to move back to Bethlehem after 10 long years away. Why? Because she's heard that the Lord has moved for his people. She has heard that the Lord has blessed his people with food. Now, I don't want to get too bogged down here. Did God really come, physically manifest, or did he provide? What we know is that whatever way this happened, it's been communicated to people that God has moved for his people and provided for them supernaturally. And this act clearly spoke deeply to Naomi. It moves her in such a way that she wants to go home. Now, I don't know if you've experienced real deep grief. I imagine that you have, because you're human. Not many of us go through life without experiencing grief. But when we are grieving, when we are mourning, the simplest thing is a difficulty, isn't it? Getting up out of bed, having a shower, washing the dishes. All that takes tremendous amounts of energy and focus because our emotions are just raging within us. That would be the same for Naomi. So it can only be something dramatic or drastic that is making her think, that is moving her in such a way to make this long journey. Because let's be honest, if she's like you and me, we normally wouldn't have the energy to do that. She is going to uproot her life for the second time to go back home. Only hope, only real hope, dependable hope, could move someone this way. This is not a desire of Naomi's to move, but it's actually a calling, a seeking of God. Because she knows change can't come within her. Her hope here is placed firmly and squarely on God. God moving for her as he has moved for his people and providing food for her. And God is actually moving in Naomi's life here. God is powerfully calling her back to himself. And I wonder if we could sit down with Naomi a few years later and, just over a cup of tea or something, and have a wee chat and be like, Naomi, what moved you to go back home? What moved you to do all this? I wonder if she would recognize that underlying her great pain and grief is actually this drive for hope. Even in her bitterness and brokenness, she still has this deep desire to find God, to be where he is. Being with God is the answer for Naomi's pain, grief, bitterness, and brokenness. And the hope that God will move for her enables her to face the day, face that travel. And Naomi's hope in God is being driven by three elements. The first is God gives hope because of who he is, his character. The second is God gives hope because of what he has done. The third is God gives hope for what he is yet to do. Naomi would have been taught this as a wee girl. She would have seen it within her lifetime as you read the book of Judges, how God has moved mightily for his people there. And we need to know the character of God, not a collection or a God of our own making, a assimilation of other gods around the God of the Bible, how God communicates himself to us. In the Bible, we are told that God is perfect, good, righteous, holy, and just. And we need to know that about God because once we see God as perfect, as Psalm 18 verse 30 says, this God, his ways is perfect. The word of the Lord proves true. He is the shield for all those who take refuge in him. Or Deuteronomy, the rock that is the Lord, his work is perfect and all his ways are just. A God of faithfulness and without iniquity, just and upright is he. Knowing the God of the Bible, how he communicates himself to us, is empowering, because if it's a concept of God, if it's a God of our own makings, we can doubt, is God good? Especially in Naomi's life, look what's happened to her. How can God be good? How can he be perfect? Our situations can erode our concept of God if we're not refreshing our minds in Scripture, reading God's Word to see how God doesn't play just a short-term game in our lives, but he is involved in every aspect of our lifetime, that he is good. As Psalm 25 says, good and upright is the Lord. Therefore, he instructs the sinners in the way. Knowing God perfectly in balance, knowing that he is good, righteous, holy, and just, actually draws people to himself. And we're seeing that sort of drawing in Naomi's life, aren't we? She's uprooting her life. She's heading back home because she has heard this holy, good, righteous God has moved for his people. And let's be honest together right now, in one sense that's just words, right? The point one is God gives hope because who he is. That needs backed up, doesn't it, in some ways? And the way we normally see people's characters is through their actions. And that's why the second one, God gives us hope for what he has done, is true. Because we see the character of people around us in hard times, right? We know the friends who bail on us when things get hard, and we know the friends whose character shines to us in hard times. We see people most often shine the brightest in our darkest moments. And so it is with God. This is Naomi's dark moment, and what she's seeing is the shining light of the character of her God, but also what God has done for his people. Naomi grew up in a time where God moved powerfully in history to give his people hope. Naomi would have heard the stories how God redeemed his people out of slavery, how he has been with them, taught them, and brought them to where they are today. How God proves his love to his people through great acts of redemption. That's Naomi's history. That's the history she would have grown up hearing. And it would give her hope. And it would give her a wonder for God. But us too here, 2020 in the Merkinch in South Keswick, God has done wonders in our history. We don't even need to go that far back. We can look at Jesus Christ as an example. We can see the great wonders of the cross and the empty tomb, especially around this time as it is Easter. It is Easter Sunday where Christians celebrate these facts. That God shows his character to us clearly through Jesus. That Jesus is the invisible God made manifest before our eyes. So if you want to know how the character of God, you look at Jesus. What do we see with Jesus? We see like this great Redeemer God of the Old Testament, don't we? Who didn't free us from Egypt, didn't free us from that form of bondage and slavery, but freed us from the slavery of sin, from the bondage of death. Jesus does this, as we said last week, in the most remarkable way. By dying on the cross, where we see God's justice and love hand in hand. Justice because he is addressing our sin, and love that his justice doesn't fall on us but falls on his Son. We see the holiness of God because he's destroying sin so that we, people who trust in Jesus as their Savior, can come before a holy God. We see the goodness in God in this provision. That Jesus took our place, our death, and our sin, so that we may live. But we also have the empty tomb, right? Where God's faithfulness and goodness is a reality to us. That Christians, yes, we look to the cross, but we also look to the empty tomb. Because if Jesus just died like any man, we would be hopeless. But the actual reality for us is Jesus conquered sin and death. They did not conquer him. We have a risen King in heaven who is seeking and saving the lost even today, 2,000 years later. Even people like Naomi who feel maybe broken and bitter and in some way unloved, God is showing them that he's good, that he's perfect, that he is righteous and holy, so that we can claim the words of Romans 28. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. God has revealed his character to us, which gives us hope. God has moved for us in the past, which should give us hope. But also God is present here in our reality. But he's also got a future, greater plan. And that is when Jesus comes together, again comes to his people. That every tear will be wiped away. All the pain and bitterness that we carry now will be finally dealt with. Yes, Jesus has moved in the past and he can move in the present for you and give you a future that is worth living for. Even if you can't see it now. Even if we're so fearful right now, we don't really know if that is possible. But greater things are yet to come with Jesus. That's the beauty of the gospel message. It isn't just that we are saved and then that's it. That's it. We're in heaven. Don't need to worry about anything. But Jesus walks with us spiritually through this life, transforming almost every sphere of our existence. Now, that doesn't mean life gets easy. Now, that doesn't mean life loses its fear or its struggles or its battles, because Naomi is a perfect example of how that is not true. But what we do say as Christians is Jesus and belief in God and trusting in him as your Redeemer gives you hope that is not it's not an uncertainty. For the Christian, a hope is real and certain because God will move for his people. And that's the message we need to hear this Easter Sunday. That you and I, when we trust in Jesus, are in safe hands. That even though the world seems a very scary place, we are in safe hands. And it's this sort of hope, this real, dependable, transformational hope that is driving Naomi to make the long journey back to Bethlehem from Moab. And just a couple of final thoughts from this, that we see that Naomi's faith is having an impact, right? Don't we see the reality of her situation, the desire to move home, the reality of who she is? There's no hope coming from within me in verse 12. It's having such an impact in her daughters-in-law that they're just almost smothering her with love. Orpah is kissing her, and Ruth is clinging to her. So even in her brokenness, even though she cannot see it, Naomi is being a witness to these two women who would not have grown up with the stories of God's redemption like Naomi, who would not understand this hope to begin with, but they're seeing it in action in Naomi's life, that she is trusting in the Lord, hoping for change. She even blesses them in the name of the Lord. So where's your hope this Easter Sunday? Is your hope placed on yourself? Is your hope placed in maybe an uncertain future? Because the gospel message is this, that Christ came to seek and save the lost like you and me. Christ came to redeem us from slavery and sin. Christ came to fight and battle for us, and ultimately to die for us on the cross. But Christ also rose victorious from the grave, so that when he starts a good work in us, he will bring it to completion. That is sure and dependable hope. And that is the hope that moved Naomi to head back to Bethlehem. And that's the hope that drives Christians in hard times. Do you have hope this Sunday? If you would like to reach out to us in the comments, if you would like to connect with me, please leave a message below. Thank you for listening.